Okay, so here we go. So today we're going to talk about Techflex. Uh, the actual name is expandable sleeving, and what I'm using here is made by a company called Keko, K-E-C-O. This is black. There's 100-foot roll, and it's like $5 or $10, and this is 3/8 of an inch. So the way this stuff is measured when you order it, buy it, is you pull a cross section. It actually measures to about a half an inch, but that's how it's measured. I think it's supposed to be the inside diameter of the unexpanded. I think the 3/8 of an inch is the unexpanded ID of the sleeving. So if you've got an item, the cross section ID. So bear with me. Um, Essentially, what you want to do if you're ordering this stuff is measure around the wire that you're going to cover and get your circumference. You're going to need a flexible, like a tailor's tape measure, or one like this, a little tiny, cheap, tape measure. Measure around it and get your measurement. And if you want to pull more than your end, so we can do that. You can see that this is 3 and 5 inches, so that's 2 inches around, and then you divide that by 2, and you get 1 inch. So that gives you the measurement that you're going to need to order this stuff if you're wanting to order it to fit over a wire. So you need to order 1 inch Techflex, okay? And what that'll do is that'll fit unexpanded. So when it's normal stretched out form, that'll fit over a 2-inch outer diameter cable perfectly. So it won't have any visible stuff through it. Now, let me grab a piece of this. This is 4 gauge, and so this is 4 gauge, and it is, if you look at the measurement, it is my 3. So there's a 2. So it's a little over an inch in diameter. So that means it's going to be a little over half an inch is what you would order. So you would order half inch. This is 3/8. But this 3/8, this stuff's a booger to work with. That's something else we're going to get to here in a second. So this 3/8, when you put it on here, covers pretty good. I mean, you can't really see much of that wire through there. In fact, this 3/8 also cover this alt gauge wire. You see, pretty good, right? Not a problem. In fact, this 3/8 will cover a 2 gauge wire. You see that? It gets very big. It would cover a 2 gauge, no problem. This 3/8 will also cover a 8 gauge wire. Do I have something in here? Yeah. Here's an 8 gauge. So you could run it on an 8 gauge. Now, when you go to getting down to 8 gauge and smaller, it's going to tend to want to swell up a little bit. See how it puffs up? So you have to pull it really tight, and I don't really suggest running it for this size. What I would probably look at is a 1/4 inch for anything smaller than a 4 gauge. So this 3/8 will handle just about any size wire that you want to use. Now, here comes the pain in the butt part. This stuff is really, really, really cool when you have it done. When you've got your wires all done up, you can end up something that looks like this. You got to admit, that looks pretty good. And this wire survived the fire too, by the way. There was actually the headway fire. This was one of the wires that was in that fire. And that's where that little bit of darkness there and some of that black came from. This all survived. But the point is the Techflex, and this is the same size as this. It's 3/8. So that's on an alt gauge wire, and it works great. And looks really, really good. Now the key is it's a pain in the butt to work with. The first thing we need to do, I want to use my new scissors I found. Oh boy, let's cut that off. And then we're going to work that up on our wire. Yeah, see, I should have just left it. I should have just left it bunched up until I got it on the wire. Like I said, this stuff is a pain in the butt to work with. It really is. Now, what I do is, there's several ways you can do this. One way is to use electrical tape and just tear off a piece that's just long enough to go around the wire. Now, this is one way. Get down there close. Now, assuming that you've got your copper lug is in here too, put your piece of tape around it, just one piece, just enough to go around the wire. Then take your scissors and trim. Now, if you've got a lug in here in the way, what you have to do is go around the lug and trim like this. So your lug's in the way, you're just trimming little bits at a time until you get it back to this point. Okay? Then you slap your heat shrink on there, go around your lug or over your lug, and this heat shrink is going to be tight. I already see that. Yeah, it's going to be a pain. I'm going to grab a piece that's a little bigger just for demonstration purposes. Here we go. Put your heat shrink on here. You got your lug, pull it out over your heat shrink, and then you heat it up with your gun, sucking it down good and tight like this. You see that'll work just fine and hold it. Then when you get done with this end, you pull this out tight, cut off the other end, the same exact process. The trick is to use a little piece of black tape around it to make it stay put. Now, if you're putting this over a long portion of wire, of course, you're going to do this number. So you're just going to pull it, you're going to push up a bubble, and then pull it out. Push up a bubble, pull it out, and walk it on there. And it may take you a while. So I usually stand in front of the TV and watch TV while I'm pulling it over like 30 feet of cable or whatever. It takes a while. And you can also double this up. So you can use multiple layers if you want. You'll notice you still see some purple through there, and that's because it's getting stretched out a little bit. The more you stretch it, the more you're going to see the color fade through it. But if you do a second layer on top of this, it'll pretty much look solid black. This stuff is really actually very tough to abrasion. It doesn't tear easy from being rubbed against something. It's not really easy to cut. You have to have a fairly decent pair of scissors to cut it. You don't want to try to cut it with these. It's just not going to work. Cutting it with a knife is rather difficult, but scissors cut it pretty well. Pull that right up on there, just like that. Walk it down. This is pretending that there's no wire. We've just got our lug crimped on there. There's not any on here already. Just a lug. Walk it down until you get it hanging off like this, right? Next step, a little piece of tape. Already done this over and over again a lot of times. So wherever you're wanting, somewhere beyond where you're wanting your heat shrink to be, you want to put your piece of tape. Just a short piece. Don't go crazy because it'll mess you up. It'll show through your shrink. Just one wrap is all you want. Okay. Then we'll get our scissors and just trim it like this. Just like so. And this crap goes everywhere. Just trim it back. Get it back to the tape. And put your heat shrink on. Now, this one might make it over all of this. Kind of snug. I left a couple of strays there, but we'll get past them. Walk that sucker on there. Get your shrink where you want it. Shrink it up. And go down. Do the same thing on the other end. Problem solved. So that's how you use this stuff. And if you don't do the tape thing, well, you're going to be fighting with it for a while. So remember, pull the bushes out, tape it, trim it, put your heat shrink on. Bob's your uncle. And that's how you make these things look pretty cool. Now, like I said, multiple layers will give you a better coverage. But there you go. So for the sizes, if you want heavier coverage, if you want it to be denser and cover the wire better, you can go to a 3/4 inch for an alt gauge, 1 inch for a double alt gauge, and 3/8 works really good for 8 gauge and 4 gauge and 2 gauge. And then if you want to cover stuff like 8 gauge and below, you're going to want to go down to like a 1/4 inch. And it's about as fine as you'll want to mess with. 1/4 inch will cover a 4 gauge, but it's going to be stretchy. A 1/4 inch is real good for 8 gauge and speaker wire and signal wires and RCAs and stuff like that. But you will have to pull it tight to do RCAs. So, because it's really small and it's going to be a little bit pushed out. So it's going to require some finesse to make that look good. But everything from an 8 gauge and up is, from a 4 gauge and up, you want 3/8 like this. And 8 gauge and down, you want 1/4 inch. And if you want to cover really good, you can go up to 3/4 of an inch for alt gauge and about 1 inch to 1 1/4 inches for bigger wire than that. I recommend, if you're just wanting to get started with this, usually 3/8 is a good size, because 3/8 will literally cover everything from 8 gauge up to 2 alt gauge, right? With different levels of see-throughness, but it will cover all of them. So if you just want to get one roll, just get a roll of 3/8. Get a couple different colors. Just try some different colors. It's good stuff, fun stuff. Just know that it's irritating, and you're going to want a pair of sharp scissors, a little roll of electrical tape, and all of what you see here. Bob's your uncle.